back to the Childhood Cancer Perspective, and thank you all so much for sticking with me. My name is Curtis. You all know me, but also through the last couple of months, I have been able to bring organizations and families on to share their missions and their stories of their children, their warriors, and it's been a great avenue to use aside from social media to be able to reach a broader audience. So this week, my guest is Elizabeth, and she is going to be sharing the story of her son, Caleb. So right now, Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Okay. So I found out Caleb's diagnosis when he was 2 months old. It was something that was seen in utero since he has a hard mass, but our local hospital saw it, but they kind of misdiagnosed it as a extra piece of like lung growth. And so we were preparing for surgery around the time of his birth to remove it just so it didn't become cancerous. So, we didn't get to do his surgery until he was closer to 6 months just because he ended up being a little smaller than he looked on the ultrasounds. So as we were waiting for time to get closer to his surgery, he became very irritable. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't sleep. He would cry about 16 hours every day, which is a lot for a newborn to go through. So we would take him to our local emergency room 2 times, and each time they looked at him and said, "He just looks like a colicky baby. He's fine." So they would send us home. I decided to just make an appointment with his pediatrician since the emergency room wasn't getting anywhere. And she said, "Oh, it looks more like acid reflux. I will just prescribe him Zofran." And my question to her, since Caleb is number 3 for me, was, with my first, you tested her for acid reflux to make sure that the medicine you're giving is something that she needs. And they said the new protocol is just to prescribe the medicine and wait and see if it works. And as a parent, you just kind of, shake your head like that isn't right. So I didn't give him the medicine. And my husband and I sat down that night and said, we've gone to the emergency room. We've, gone to our pediatrician. We agreed that at this point we needed to just maybe find a different hospital to take him to because he just was inconsolable. We couldn't get him to stop crying within those 16 hours unless we were rocking him, bouncing him, shushing him, like all at the same time, which, with 2 other kids is really hard to do for so much time. So we took him to a different hospital that night and, we just told them everything we've been through and that something just isn't right. And that's when they decided to run a few scans. They did a CT scan. And that's when they saw the same mass that our local hospital saw. And they said, "This doesn't look like what they told you it is." They said, "We don't have the resources to confirm or deny anything, so we're going to send you to another local hospital to run more tests, and they would have better answers to give you." So we were transported via ambulance, and that's when we received the diagnosis that Caleb had neuroblastoma, and it was intermediate neuroblastoma simply because by the time he was diagnosed, he was also symptomatic. So instead of being low risk, which he could have been, he ended up being intermediate risk. So we immediately started chemotherapy, and that's just a lot as, first of all, a new mom of 3, just to fathom, you're taking your son to the hospital for colic or crying, and, you find out that, he's got cancer, and it was just a lot. So, they tried not to bombard us with too much information, but they told us everything we needed to know, just as far as like his livelihood and his survival rate and everything like that. They kind of left the more in-depth things for later times. He completed, I believe it was 4 to 6 rounds of chemotherapy, and then he completed his treatment. He rang the bell. We thought everything was great until April of this year when we went for a scan and we saw that his tumor completely grew back to the same size it was when he was originally diagnosed. So they gave him 2 more rounds of chemo, and then he went in for surgery on July 1st. And coming out of that surgery, we felt hopeful. We thought that this was the new beginning we would, finally have, and Caleb would get to enjoy his life. But we found out that Friday that the surgeon did not remove the tumor, he removed Caleb's adrenal gland. So it just kind of went from bad to worse, just having that diagnosis and then it not even being taken care of once you go to such an extreme measure as surgery is overwhelming. So we've been speaking with Cincinnati, the hospital there, and they plan on doing Caleb's next surgery Wednesday, actually, to hopefully finally close this journey and end everything. And unfortunately, Caleb has had some issues with his adrenal gland being removed since it was healthy and it was functioning. So he may need to be on hormones for the rest of his life, but that's kind of where we are now.
Wow. Absolutely. Wow. So I've got, definitely a lot of questions, but the first one, I guess, and maybe the most glaring is, was this a mistake to remove the adrenal gland?
Yes. I remember the surgeon came in on Friday. He just woke me up. We've been in the hospital since Monday. And so he came into the room and said, I think the tumor wasn't removed. He said, but we need more scans to find out. And as a person just coming to, it was like, are you saying that the wrong thing was removed? And he said, possibly. He said, most likely. And I just kind of, I guess, left the conversation at that since it was first too early in the morning to even think about something like that happening. And second of all, I mean, even just once I, woke up, it was still just hard to fathom that something could go so terribly wrong considering, as Caleb having cancer has received so many scans. There should have been no shadow of a doubt on where his tumor was. But yeah, it ended up being a mistake.
Was this a pediatric surgeon or just a general surgeon?
It was a pediatric surgeon who has done surgeries to remove hard tumors before.
Wow. I honestly don't even know how to process all of that. And, being in the same, not that exact, but being in that situation of being in the hospital for days and days and weeks and being woken up to really make decisions or be told news, to have heard something like that, I just don't even know how I would have reacted to that. I guess I don't know how to process. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's how we felt.
So well, I mean, okay. I guess we might have to come back to that. That might have to be more to unpack. But the biggest thing that I notice, and it's a similarity that comes along with, well, hell, our story and pretty much every story that I've talked to anybody in this community with pediatric cancer, is the overwhelming, and I would put it in the 90 percentile range of just misdiagnosis or diagnosis as the easy thing versus looking for, what it possibly could be, which to an extent I understand, right? If a kid comes in colicky, you're not going to expect it to be cancer. But at the same time, it's really about kind of letting the parents direct where things are going, because we as parents know our children's baselines, right? We know this is not colic, or with our daughter, this is not constipation that is later diagnosed as brain cancer. There's signs and symptoms that you really have got to give us as parents a little bit more credit and listen to what we've got to say, and maybe just, as doctors, not all of you, some of you are fantastic, but really swallow your pride and allow us to kind of let you know what's going on, because we're the ones that are with our kids every day.
Yeah. There's even times where I've had to tell them, I understand you have so much more knowledge than I do. I understand you could even be an expert in your field, but I promise you I'm an expert on my children. And, sometimes I've, argued with doctors and said, this may be what your, textbook says, but this isn't what my son needs. And they've, kind of regrouped and we figured out a different way. And, it's always worked, of course, because, parents know their children best.
Yeah, and I've said it a million times, and I compare it to, growing up, right? You're told, and you make the comment, well, there's no books written on how to raise children. Well, reality is there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of books on how to raise kids. But I think most of them are written by people that don't have kids. So I think all those books are crap. I think, and the same thing goes with dealing with a child that is fighting this disease. You may have textbook smarts. You may have a degree on your wall. You may have 20 years in college and residencies and all that stuff. But as parents, do I think that we're smarter than you when it comes to being a doctor or a physician? Maybe not, but we definitely have the knowledge that you got to give us credit for. and we're doing the research, and we don't get to clock out at the end of the day when it comes to our kids, allowing us to say, hey, what about this, or what about this, or how about this treatment, or how about this option, and not blowing us off because, it could hurt your pride, or not blowing us off because, well, we're just parents. We had our oncologist at, a few weeks before our daughter passed say that we don't usually share the big words with parents because we don't think that you can understand them. That sucks, because I promise you we understand a lot more than you give us credit for. And so that misdiagnosis and things like that, a lot of it comes from the fact that you think that we're crazy, right? We keep bringing our kids in over and over and over for the same thing. It's not because we want to be there. It's not because we're excited to go to the doctor in the hospital. There's something wrong, and it's not the easiest diagnosis. You can't treat and treat these kids. You've got to really dig in and find out what's going on.
That's right.
Now, you did mention that he rang the bell, and want to say it's kind of a controversial topic in this, at least in this community, not because they don't deserve to have that victory if they get through their chemotherapy, their treatments, and all that stuff. If their scans are clear, I think they deserve that victory. They absolutely do. But I think not maybe for us, but for, the outside, for the layperson, it really becomes a misnomer saying that you rang the bell, everything's good, it's all done, right? They're through with their battle. And I often say when they ring the bell is when the battle truly starts, because you're on a 5-year timer at that point. When we hear 80% cure rates, we hear 80% have a 5-year cure rate. Past 5 years, you're going to be cancer free. So within that 5 years, I don't know about you, but for us, whenever a bell was rang or when treatment was over, you're on the edge of your seat every single day. And a bruise is no longer a bruise. A cough is not a cough. And everything changes in your life. You're the same people, but everything day to day changes.
I agree. I know, even with my other kids, we're just so scared to even do simple things where, like, our mind automatically goes to, what if one of our other kids ends up with, the same diagnosis? Like, what if we do something? What if something happens? And it's so crazy to think that, just because our youngest was diagnosed with it, your mind just completely changes, not only for, child that's diagnosed, but for your other children. And I think that it has maybe kind of hurt us in a way, just because we may not give them the same opportunities as other kids simply because we're just afraid. And I agree that, just because you are done with chemotherapy doesn't even mean that you're done with any treatment. Just because you're done with the chemotherapy, Caleb's next line of treatment was Accutane to try to remove his neuroblastoma. So I do think that by ringing the bell, people who aren't familiar with cancer do think that, oh, they've completed their journey, this is the end, when in reality, it goes so much further than that. And even, after that 5-year period, from a parent, it will never be gone. You'll always have that fear. And I know I will always have that fear that, something could happen. And it stinks, but it's just our new reality.
Right. Yep. It's a reality that we live with every single day. And I know, we have 2 other daughters as well. And there's, if one gets, and my wife is very much on the side of, if something happens, oh my God, and goes to the worst in her brain automatically shifts to the worst case. For me, even in the worst case scenario, I'm looking for, it could possibly just be this. And it's that trying to find a fine line of balance of, how much do we freak out each time one of them has a headache, or one of them, is sick or not feeling well and stuff like that. And, it's unfortunate that that's the way that your brain kind of goes now, but it's been kind of reprogrammed, right? To think that everything could go wrong, or it could go wrong, with your other children. And it's not wrong, but it sucks that's, you really can't get rid of that. You can't move past it and ever think anything else, because you've been in a position where you thought it was just a simple colic, right? We thought it was just simple constipation, and it turned our life upside down. So, for other people to look on the outside and maybe think that we're overreacting because of certain things, and it's like, maybe we are, but at the same time, we weren't cancer parents until the day that we were, right? We weren't in this community, part of this family, until the day that we were. Before that, we were probably guilty of not really understanding how prevalent this is in our world. And now that we're part of it, we're wondering why nobody else is paying as close of attention to their kids, and while nobody else is thinking it could be me any day, and it could be, because we don't understand why pediatric cancer happens. We don't understand why it's changing everything and why it happens to everybody, whether you eat diet A or diet B, or whether you live here or there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. We can't associate it to adult cancers like for drinking or smoking or just being stupid like we are as adults and making mistakes and doing things that they don't have a chance to. We can't associate that, so we don't understand why it happens.
Yeah. And I know that before my son was diagnosed, I was one of those people who had no idea what cancer truly was. My dad had lung cancer, but his was a surgery and it was gone. I didn't know what chemotherapy was. I didn't know how they were given the chemotherapy and just all of the things outside of that come with it. The hospital stays, the neutropenia, just all of it. It's a lot. And until something happens, you'll never know.
Yeah, it's until you see this from the inside. And to be honest with you, between adults and children, and adults, the difference being obviously, size and age and things like that, but they can tell you how they're feeling. They can tell you what's going on, and they can, kind of adjust their life and still maybe function. Whereas kids, as amazing as they are, they can't really explain in detail what's going on. So unless you've seen chemotherapy given to a child, I don't think you'll ever truly understand what it does to them and what it does to their bodies on the inside when you're told by the nurses, the doctors, and the staff, don't touch anything that comes out of them because it could be toxic to you. And for me and every parent that I've ever talked to in that situation, for my response to the nurses, I don't care. But what is it doing to the inside of them if by the time it comes out, it's that toxic to me? And that's the harsh reality of this, and that's what we're hoping. We're hoping to fix and change with our efforts, with our nonprofit and things like that. And advocacy is we've got to have better options for these kids. One day we want to rid this world of cancer, and especially in kids. But until then, we've got to give better options because what they have now is just not okay.
I agree. It's not okay. And I have, shared with everyone close to me the options given for children. The 4 chemotherapies available for children and what they're made from. And, you look at adult cancers, and I'm not saying adult cancer is something anybody should go through either, but they have so many more options that I just wish they would focus a little more on pediatric cancer and give them the same opportunities that adults currently have. And I've seen they're even trying to invent a vaccine to help prevent certain types of cancers. But those cancers are adult cancers. They're not pediatric cancers. And I just don't know when the kids will get what they deserve, which is a lot more than.
Right. Yep, it's the 4%. Even last year when we were in D.C., they touted 8%, and to me, even that is a joke. That's a slap in the face because when you look at the statistics, and we could read them off all day long, the statistics say that 1 in every 5 children diagnosed with this disease are going to pass away, and by donating or by devoting 8%, if that's what it is, or 4%, even 20%, by devoting way, way less than half of the budget to children, which make up 78 million in the United States alone, you're saying that one child that will not survive is acceptable loss. And that means that you're saying that my daughter was acceptable loss. And that's not okay. And that's not something that I'm willing to back down on, and or any of the families that I speak to are willing to back down on. This is something that we need to fix now. We don't have time to sit around and wonder, whether it's going to happen to a politician that, by the sudden, then they'll start caring because it happened to them personally. this could happen to anybody anytime. And I think that's the reality people need to understand. And like I said, that we don't have any idea why pediatric cancers happen. Very few can be linked to any type of genetic things or any type of food or that environment, that kind of stuff. Very small percentages can be linked to that stuff. Most of it is just shitty luck. And it's without that, it doesn't make any sense that people can turn a blind eye. But at the same time, like you said, and like I've said in the past too, that I was maybe blind or numb to the fact that this was such an incredible epidemic in this world, pediatric cancer. I mean, I, again, grew up not knowing that, maybe 4 or 5 floors up in our local hospital, there was a wing of children fighting for their lives with this disease. Or watching what we call on this show is the commercial people, watching that commercial over and over and over and over again, they make it seem like they're curing everybody and that everything's okay. And that no matter what, you're not going to get a bill. Who gives a shit about a bill? I want to make sure that my kid's okay. But that commercial and the way that marketing comes across, we're made to believe that everything's okay. And I think, unfortunately, that type of marketing, and from not only that, but from our government has shown too many people that this is not a problem worth fighting for because, well, it's under control. The percentages are way up. But again, we can go deep in the weeds about what those percentages mean. But what they mean in the easy side of it is it sucks. And you're not doing enough so that we don't have to be in a position to carry the load as parents for what our own government, politicians, and lawmakers should be doing for us. I could go on for hours about that stuff, but so I wanted to talk then about when it comes to ringing the bell, when it comes to the lead up to diagnosis, ringing the bell, and relapse. All of them are different stages within this pediatric cancer journey. And all of them then, at least for us, would bring about a different level of support from family, friends, and community. And you'll have to tell me if this is the same with you, but once treatment was done, a lot of people disappeared. When our daughter passed away, about 90% of the supporters that were there for us disappeared. And we're left to, well, you guys don't need our support anymore, so they're gone. Did you notice a level of change in support from the beginning to where you are now?
Yes. I would say that at first diagnosis, everybody kind of flocks to you. What do you need? What does Caleb need? Let me help you with this. Just a lot of support, even just, financially. I had family set up a GoFundMe and that took care of the first diagnosis. But then when it comes back, everybody, still offered their sympathy, but it wasn't, anything that could actually help. And, I'm not trying to sound like greedy. I'm thankful that, we were able to get through Caleb's first diagnosis without paying for all of it, but when the second time comes around, it is a lot harder to find the help that you had the first time, even if it is financially. So with this time, we've used a lot more resources from the hospital, like financial resources, even emotional resources. It's gotten to the point where instead of, the community being, there to listen to me, I've, I have a therapist, and, it kind of, it dwindled down quickly. And so I don't think that people realize that the first time, it's so easy when you have so much support around you to kind of get through this journey and, help your child through it. But as the support kind of dwindles away, it makes the journey a lot harder, not only financially, but emotionally. And I don't know if it's just, like it must be so easy to just kind of like forget, and go about your normal day when we don't have that option anymore. And I understand people can't just drop what they're doing, to help me, but, just an occasional, like, how are you doing? Or is everything okay? Or how's Caleb? It would mean a lot. And, just because, like I said, people go back to their normal lives, they forget that we're still over here struggling.
Yeah, it definitely is shocking, I think, in to have everybody kind of come to you and be there for you. And I remember the first few days in the hospital, I couldn't keep up with all the messages on my phone and everybody calling and texting and stuff like that. And throughout that battle, throughout that journey, the support was really well. And honestly, we kind of joke now that we're never as wealthy as when we were when she was sick, because it's like the church, everybody wants to dump money on and help you and send it your way, almost like it's going to fix everything, And it was like, that's wonderful, because I'm not working right now while I'm home with her, and that helps. But as soon as something either tragic happens or the bell ringing and it's okay, well, treatment's over, we can just, this carnival's over, we don't need to sit here and watch anymore, then people just disappear. And it's amazing to me, because even if, like in our unfortunate circumstance of losing our daughter, even then we continued on with a nonprofit. And you would think that the same type of people that were there for you would be in your corner and be there supporting you in what you do. And the reality is that none of them do anymore. Nobody from her, maybe I think one person from her entire school, still keeps in contact with us. Like, we're closer with the social worker at the hospital still and the child life specialist than we are with the people that were there for us in the beginning. And again, I don't understand it. I know maybe it's about, well, we're helping somebody. We're there for somebody that, I don't know, you feel good about yourself. But then whenever that initial blow is over, everybody just wants to scatter and go on about their way. And, whether the bell happens or whether the child passes or, whatever else, we still need that support going forward, because we are always going to be the same people, but essentially broken. And we're not damaged goods, but we are broken. And we've had something tragic happen, either diagnosis or we need your support still. We need you to be there again, to just, how are you doing? How's Caleb doing? Hey, can I drop off dinner for you? Can I go get groceries for you? And just anything, just little stuff like that. We don't need you to give us the world, or just let us call you on the phone and offer ear for us to yell and scream because we're just angry at the situation and we just want to do that. That's what's important. And that is what gets lost in the shuffle, I think. And too many people just, unfortunately, can just go back to their normal lives. And we don't have that option. But that's our support corner for today, and that's where we are. We need, honestly, anybody that's listening, that's following. The support comes more as you get deeper and deeper into the journey, deeper and deeper along those ways. We need the support more, because we need to know that there's people there for us that can do anything, from the littlest, just call me on the phone, to taking us out for a day to shop or go get coffee or something to get out of the house, just doing anything. We need that support more and more as we move forward in life, because it does not get easier as we move forward. It continues to be hard and get harder. And so just, be good people, and remember that those around you could be going through the worst time of their life. And if you know them, just be there. So that's my TED Talk on that situation. But it's definitely tough. I think that's part of one of the hardest things that I think we've had to deal with, is that kind of loss of support. So it always gets me, and I always want to, really kind of get other people's views on it, because it just, I hate to hear it, and I've yet to hear anybody tell me, oh no, everybody's still been there. Everybody's that was there in the beginning is still here for us now. And you often get support from people that are not blood more than the people that are.
I'm thankful that we have a very close family that understands cancer. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of cancer in my family. So they all kind of sympathized with Caleb just being so small, receiving chemotherapy. I remember a couple months into his first couple treatments, his dad and his grandpa shaved their head for him and, just kind of created that solidarity with him. They said that if he lost all of his hair this last time, they would have done it, but he didn't lose all of his hair. So they got lucky there. But I agree that something you said was that people should just be nice, and I think there's a lot of that lacking. Just, anywhere you go, people only really think of themselves, and it's really just apparent through their actions. not everybody. Just, when you're out and about, you see people who just kind of do things that, if they were nice about it, it wouldn't have made much of a difference other than not ruining somebody's day. I think that, especially with how the world is now, people should be a lot nicer to other people than they are. And, just because somebody looks okay on the outside doesn't mean they're okay on the inside. You never know what somebody's going through. And, just because, we're not at Walmart crying our eyes out doesn't mean we're not, experiencing something that we definitely prefer not to be going through.
Yep. No, I've said it in the past that we as parents, especially in this community, we let you see exactly what we want to let you see. So we are really, really good, and we develop the skill really, really quickly of putting up a wall, and that wall lets people in to what we want you to see. So yes, are we breaking down in our own homes and absolutely. Are we breaking down out in public? Probably not as much. And that doesn't mean that we're okay, that we're past it, that we're over it. It means that we've adapted. It means that we've figured out how to survive because we have other responsibilities, right? You have other children. I have other children. We have responsibilities that we have to find a way to live and find a way to adapt and overcome. And, no matter what, I always say you don't ever move on with something like this. You move forward. And with that, we found a way to do it. So the public sees what we want the public to see. So don't assume that because it's been 10 years since his diagnosis, or it's been 10 years since, our daughter passed, that we're just over it, right? That we've just, we're just done with it. You don't have to talk about it anymore. No, we're still dealing with it. And if you truly want to know how we feel, then be genuine and ask us questions, because I myself love talking about our daughter. I love talking about who she was. I love talking about everything, because that's how you get people to understand, and that's how you get that awareness out there. That's how you get more people to come stand next to you and fight with you, fight with you alongside you. That's how you get that. So don't be afraid to ask questions. But, if you ever have an opportunity to meet one of these children and speak to them, they will change your perspective on life, no matter how old they are, because they are, as children, true and genuine hearts that don't know anything. They don't know hate. They don't know anger. They don't know any of this stuff that's going on in the world today. They just know that they're a kid. They want to smile. They want to be happy. They want to play. That's what they want. They'll change your perspective on life. That's what we're missing in this world, is that true, genuine innocence. And I remember that was one things that our neurosurgeon said to us, is the reason that he became a pediatric neurosurgeon is because he wanted to protect the innocence of children, because they can't speak for themselves. So we have to give them a voice. And that's part of what this podcast is for, and part of what our army is all about, is trying to give these children a voice that they don't currently have. So let's see here. Now I want to go back, and I want to ask again about this surgery situation. I can't get past this whole thing. Like, I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. If I was doing surgery, everything would look the same to me. I wouldn't know what I was looking for. However, I feel like certain things would be hard to make a mistake on, especially if you know exactly what you're doing or you know what you're looking for. How was this ever? I mean, I don't know how you resolved this situation, but was this something that was ever resolved? Did you have to have? Was this surgeon? Did you ask them not to be on your case anymore? I mean, I feel like I want to know more about that, because it just blows my mind.
Sure. Well, I know they're still investigating everything. I thought it would be closer to done by now, but when I spoke to them Friday, they said that there's still just a lot of factors that go into it, because he wasn't an employee of the hospital. They kind of like outsourced to different independent surgeons in their offices and use them. So I guess what they're trying to figure out is not only what happened, but also, who is responsible for fixing what has happened to Caleb. And so far they covered our plane flights to Cincinnati. They haven't covered them back yet, but we're working on it. They paid for his endocrinology appointment. It's just kind of things like that. Anything really genuinely helpful in a sense that Caleb can't get an adrenal gland back. Caleb will always now have these issues. You know, we tried speaking to lawyers and they said, the most we can get is 500,000. They said it's just not worth our time, and as a parent that's hard to hear that, we don't put a price on our children. So to hear that it isn't enough money just to fight for a child, it's hard to hear. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I can't make somebody just, do it for Caleb, and no other reason but Caleb. So yeah, things are still kind of in the air. And thankfully, the surgeon, we haven't had any contact with him since the 5th of July, which was that Friday, simply because I told him that if I see him, it would not be good. And we originally were looking at a hospital in Fort Worth, but the surgeon there kind of told us that he has accidentally cut an aorta or, cut certain nerves that require that your body needs. He said that Caleb could come out internally paralyzed with his breathing, and I was like, okay, no thank you. And I moved on to Cincinnati, and that surgeon, I brought up the concerns of the paralysis and the severing of the aorta, and he said these are not things that he has ever experienced firsthand, and obviously he'll make sure that it doesn't happen with Caleb either. So I think a lot of it also just boils down to the amount of time that you take to help these children. And I don't think that our children should be rushed through a surgery. And it's kind of scary to think that some of the larger hospitals do that. It's not an in and out process. They don't understand. They can't understand how much us parents go through to sit there and think that saying that stuff is okay as far as, we can get them in and out. This may happen and that may happen, but they'll be okay. It's like, no, we expect a lot more for our children, especially after everything they've been through. And, we've seen those shows where parents go shopping for a doctor and they get in a lot of trouble for doing so. But I think it's wrong for people to assume that that's what parents are doing when we're simply just trying to find the best for our child.
Right. And we are in this situation, we are forced to make very, very quick decisions without a ton of research sometimes, and don't have that option. And to be honest, if we could go back in time and change anything, it would be looking around to make sure that we had the best of the best. Not because we may not trust what you're going to do, but we want to make sure that if there's someone out there that has more experience in this one particular area, that's who we want operating on our kid, or that's who we want doing that. That's crazy to me that anybody or any, that's come up several times with other guests, is talking about doctors that say things that maybe they didn't mean anything by it, but at the same time, you got to stop and think before you open your mouth, because we are vulnerable at that point, right? And for what you say to us is going to stick with us. And to say anything along the lines of, well, we may do this or this, and it may cause, listen, we understand there's going to be chances of things happening in surgery. Okay, that's almost the list of risks is probably the same for every surgery to an extent, that this can happen, this could possibly happen. But there's some things maybe that we don't need to say, or we don't need. The bedside manner is a real thing, and some have it and some don't. And I think some of the younger doctors who have, or even the ones that work in children's hospitals, a lot of them have really learned how to speak to parents and speak to kids, versus some of the old timers that this is what it is. For us, it was a difference. We had a young surgeon. They shaved a tiny spot to do a brain surgery. The older surgeon came in and said, hell, I would have shaved her whole head, because that's just the way they're used to doing things. And it's not about, we don't want to learn anything new, but for God's sakes, take your time and do things right. We're not in any rush for you to get out here and tell us that you got it done in record time. This is not an Olympic sport, right? We were told 6 hours for the first surgery that our daughter had. It took 10. We were crawling up the walls wanting to know what was going on. But I'm glad they took the 10 hours to do it, because you're in there doing it right. Take your time. There's no reason to rush. And the last thing we want to hear is you'll be in and out. This is not a Jiffy Lube. Okay. This is complicated surgery on a very small body that you need to be very careful and take your time and do it right.